Thank you so much, eGov, and good morning to everyone. Thank you so much for making time today. We heard, some really exciting initiatives from government in terms of, electronics and semiconductor manufacturing and the scale at which it is, being brought into India, right? Mr. Singh in the morning, spoke about the importance of digital public infrastructure, right? So India has done, an unparalleled job in terms of building a large scale infrastructure, right? When I share some of these numbers, in terms of the kind of scale at which we operate, whether it's railways, whether it's, government e-marketplace, whether, it's any other public sector scheme, right? And I share these numbers with some of my colleagues, from the West world. They are amazed at, the kind of scale we run, right? And it's unseen, unparalleled, right? I was taking some notes when Mr. Singh was speaking, right? And he also mentioned the importance of AI, right? How AI is going to play a critical role in the success of the entire digital public infrastructure and delivery of IT services for citizens and, the common man, right? And also mentioned, the importance of not only consuming the services, not only consuming the infrastructure and consuming the platforms that are made available, but also being an exporter to that effect, right? And I think it's already happening. We recently heard about UPI, now being looked at outside of India, right? It's already making its footprints in other regions, right? So all of these are large scale projects, right? Which handle thousands of transactions, thousands of users, and facilitate the digital inclusion that the government is focused on. Can we have the slides, please? So while the slides come up, right, I think a couple of things which I feel are really important to the success of these digital initiatives and these platforms, right? Before I go ahead, I just wanted to kind of start with something which all of us use in our daily lives: digital verification, right, or KYC. Now, if I may ask, just show of hands, how many of us have used the Aadhaar-based digital verification service in last 30 days? I have used it as recent as yesterday, right? So my mutual fund provider wanted me to do the KYC again, and I went through this whole chain of validation via digital KYC, which made certain requests to Aadhaar system. The DigiLocker also came into picture, and I was thinking that it looks so easy for me, right? I just have to open the app on my phone, press couple of buttons, and my verification is done. But behind the scenes, there is huge infrastructure, huge digital public infrastructure, which is coming into play to facilitate that transaction happening, for me while I'm sitting at my home enjoying my cup of coffee. So recent numbers, right, about some of these popular schemes are mind-boggling in a certain way, right? So if you look at Aadhaar, or you look at the direct, business direct benefits transfer schemes, the health schemes, right? Be it NHA, be it eSanjeevani, right? All of these have huge scale in terms of transactions and how they touch the common lives of individuals. And some of these are life critical in a certain way, right? If eSanjeevani or the hospital admission is not working when the patient wants to use it, right there at the hospital, it becomes sometimes a life critical service for him, right? So while it is important that we keep building and keep enhancing these services, there are certain areas where we have improvements to make, right? Those improvements could be in terms of how safe these are. Do they work for the user, right? Do they perform when required, right? So resiliency, cybersecurity, the experience of the user, all of these become important to ensure that we are not just building and delivering these services, we're also ensuring that the common man is using those, with the click of a button, and it's never becoming a roadblock or obstruction, right, for somebody to leverage the services. So when you look at the India stack, how these applications, services, and IT products are being made, it runs on the, India stack, as it is popularly called, right? 3 layers of India stack. We have identity layer, payment layer, and, data layers, which come together, and they become the base building block for these services to be built and delivered, right? And the examples that I took are just few, but I think in reality, we have hundreds of such applications, such platforms, such public services, which are today being used by common people, right? So what happens now is that these are just 3 layers, and that's the base stack on which we are building most of it. But as we go and and look at it from the perspective of people who are ensuring that these are up and running always, right? Teams, IT teams of various departments, our partners, public sector partners, private sector partners, right? All of the people who come together to not only develop these, but also ensure that they are up and running 24/7, that the users are using them effectively, that there are no challenges, that a common man sitting somewhere in Andhra Pradesh should not have any problem when he wants to use the OPT service, right? So there's a lot of complexity that comes into play, right? And it is like, think of it as a mesh of a lot of interwoven infrastructure layers that are coming together to facilitate these services, right? So what's happening is that behind the scenes, if I just double click on it, there's complex technologies that are being used, right? I was with the with the GEM CTO, Dr. Dikshit, a couple of days back, and he spoke about the scale at which GEM is working. I think we're talking about 3.5 lakh crores worth of merchandise value being transacted on that platform. And he says that we're only doing 30% of what we are supposed to, right? So when we try to look inside how that is being facilitated, we have a lot of insights, right? Insights in terms of what is the kind of infrastructure they're using. So there's a lot of cloud, and modern technologies being built into play, right? The volume of data that they're handling, right? The kind of data that the GEM platform has to process day in, day out, an example is overwhelming, right? Also, what has happened is that the needs also change, right? There are political reasons, there are business reasons where we have to keep making changes to these IT platforms, these IT services, the citizen-facing services day in, day out, right? So the frequency of change just adds to the complexity. Something that I have built today is good for today maybe, but tomorrow the needs will change, right? There will be a new regulation maybe, right? Change in the way we are doing business, right? And all of that would mean that I have to now also have the ability to adapt to those changes. So I'm always at risk of, something breaking down because maybe some component somewhere changed in this entire complex mesh, and it can bring my entire service down, right? And then we have all heard, various news of public bashing, and citizens going on Twitter and complaining about things, right? So it becomes critical. And applications, obviously, which facilitate all of this are the face, right? So all of this is being hidden behind the nice application which we leverage for our Digi lockers, and for our Digi Yatra while we are walking through the airport, right? And last but not the least, the amount of resources that we have to manage these is limited, right? So we have limited time, of course. Time is always a constraint, right? We are always focused on saving costs, right? Ensuring that the turnaround time to deliver these things to, keep up with the demands of, of the government and the regulations and rules is, up to date. So all of these things, are just adding to the complexity of how we are delivering and building the services. And it's not an easy job, right? Some of you who probably, are kind of doing this or have teams who, ensure that they are, daily engaged in upkeep and maintenance of these services, they go through this pain every day. And for us who are, representing these services, who are answerable for the uptime, availability, resiliency of these services, we also have answers, to give back, right? So the traditional approach of ensuring the resiliency and availability and health of these IT services, citizen-facing services, has been, typically a lot of dashboards, right? In traditional world, we would call it monitoring, where, we have a team of people who are sitting in one room and they have these thousands of screens. They're looking at those screens to see how well something is working. And all they're doing is looking at various, color codes to decide whether something needs attention or not. Something going red, something going green is, is the only deciding factor in terms of how good or how bad the service availability is, right? And there's a popular term for this in industry which is called eyeball analytics. So it is dependent on human beings to constantly look at the screen, look at some metrics which they deem fit, as the right indicators of service health, and using those, screens and those colors, they make certain decisions in terms of what should be done, right? But this is not enough. Why it is not enough? Because of the complexity, right? Because of the scale at which these services are operating because of so many third parties that are coming into play, right, to ensure the delivery of the services, right? So what is required, right? So before I get into the details of how we can make our experience for our citizens and our users better, right, I would talk about three things which I think are very critical for the success of any digital infrastructure and the services delivered on those infrastructure elements, right? Those three things are user experience, right? I think user experience is I would say should be the only parameter to assess whether something is living up to the expectations or not. Everything could be all fine in our own data centers, in our own environments, but if it is not working for the user, whether it's a farmer, whether it's a student, whether it's somebody who is availing a healthcare service, it is not available, right? The second is resiliency. Resiliency is something we have to think continuously about. Every day we need to, take actions, analyze data, and ensure that the resiliency is taken care of, because if something breaks, the experience, goes for a toss. And the third is the threats and the security, right? So, while we are operating, in a world where we have done a good job in terms of safeguarding the perimeter within which our applications or our services are, hosted and running, there are additional steps, I suppose, which are required to ensure that the security is built from within as well. It's just not the layer or the perimeter that is enough. It's also the internals of those services, whether it's applications, whether it's infrastructure. The security has to be baked into that, right? It just cannot be that somebody is fencing the gate, addressing security from perimeter perspective, but also from inside, right? So to address these three challenges and at the scale at which it is required, right, there are two key critical technology change agents which we all need to really look at if we have to address these three primary factors: the user experience, the resiliency, and the security. And those two change agents that are very popular in industry now, one is automation and the second is AI. And we heard about AI's role, in the previous speaker spoke about AI very highly, right? So how can AI now, help me, and how can automation help me in delivering best in class user experience, citizen experience? How can it help me deliver resilient, available, always healthy digital services? And how can it help me, protect it, right, from different perspectives, not from outside, but also from inside out, right? So if you talk about the AI, that has really played the role in terms of ensuring the resiliency and security and, the uptime of services, right? There's a popular AI trend in industry nowadays, which is being called as hypermodal AI, right? Why hypermodal? Because it works on various modalities, right? So if I take a couple of minutes to talk about it, you can see that what hypermodal AI is doing in context of whatever we spoke about, right? It is basically working on modalities based on different data layers, right? So when I spoke about services, there are applications, there are, user behavior, there's network, there's databases, there are external services that I'm integrating with, right? So all of those data points bring in their own modalities and their own complications, and anything that goes wrong in these layers can break it, right? So humanly, with the dashboard approach, with the eyeball analytics approach, I just can't keep up with it, right? So what I need an AI which can help me broadly in three ways. One, can it predict such incidents from happening? So before my service goes down, before my users start to have the bad experience, can it predict it for me, right? Can I know in advance that something is going to go wrong, right? And maybe take corrective actions proactively. So that is first part of hypermodal AI, which is predictive, right? So predictive AI is focused on the predictions, on forecasting, on giving you the view ahead, how it's going to be for next 1 week, right? The second element of the AI is causal AI. Now, despite our best of interests and all the state-of-the-art technology that we implement in our digital infrastructure, we cannot prevent incidents and issues from happening. There will be attacks. There will be situations where services will go down, right? My infrastructure will give up because of certain complexity or certain influx of traffic, right? So in those cases, what I want now is that if I cannot prevent it, can I recover from it as fast as I can? And that is where the causal AI, which is second element of hypermodal AI, comes into play. So causal AI focuses on giving you a AI driven analytics, which helps you understand from the complex mesh of interdependent services and infrastructure elements where exactly is the problem, right? What is causing this? So imagine this, right? In the previous era, what we are doing is we are looking at dashboards, looking at 20 screens. Somebody is implying his intelligence to understand and take a decision. Now AI is doing that heavy lifting for us. AI is analyzing all of that. We are not looking at dashboards. It is analyzing all the data, all the user behavior, all the downtimes, right? And giving you information about why certain problems are happening, and also the corrective action that needs to be taken, right? The root cause identification, right? So that is the purpose of causal AI, right? And the third AI, generative AI, it's very popular, everybody's speaking about it. So can we make use of generative AI also to make our systems more secure and resilient? Yes, right? So generative AI is making the life of the users easier, right? It gives the users of these kind of applications, right, the ability to interact with the systems in natural language, right? So no longer has somebody got to look at the complex data and then analyze it and then take decisions. The generative AI makes it possible for you to interact with it in the natural language, right? So all of this put together, what is Dynatrace as a technology doing, right? So what we offer, right? I'm a salesman of the day, so I can't go without talking about the product, right? So all of this comes together into a platform, right? That is making it possible for various customers, government, public sector, private, financial institutions, and so on. They leverage the Dynatrace technology to do three things primarily. First and foremost, have the end-to-end view or 360-degree view of how well the entire system is working, infrastructure, applications, services, integrations, and as I said earlier, the user experience, right? From user's perspective, it starts from top down, looks at your user and understands how well the user is using it. Is user facing problems somewhere? Is he getting frustrated because certain things are not working, right? And then, does its job of connecting all the dots together, right? Traces that users request all the way through to your, data centers and even external services, right? To give you a visibility of how well and how healthy the services are, right? The second thing that it's doing is that when incidents are happening, it's using all of those AI components I spoke about, the predictive AI, the causal AI, and generative AI, to ensure that we know about those problems much ahead of time, right? Before our larger user bases are impacted, before users start complaining about certain service not working on Twitter, we get to know about it and we can take corrective actions much faster and bring systems back up, right? And thirdly, the problems should not happen in the first place, right? A lot of these such problems they shouldn't happen in first place. So it's also giving you qualitative feedback continuously in terms of how you can improve your services over time, right? While we have, all the elements of AI and other things to see the user experience, to recover from situations in the fastest possible way. But can we over time improve the quality itself so that the downtimes, outages do not happen ever? So that is the third, focus area for Dynatrace. So the platform, in nutshell, is delivering all these use cases, the various boxes that you see at the top, right? Ranging from user experience to security analytics to your infrastructure monitoring, application monitoring. There are around 200 use cases that we provide, right? In interest of time, I'm not going to go into the details of those, but we are around, right? So please feel free to catch us here, and we'll be happy to help you understand more about how we can be more relevant, to your business and your line of work. So that's pretty much from my side. And with that, thank you so much for your time. Jai Hind.